It's your Thursday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy to be back for another day. Hope everybody's having a great day out there today. Terrific show coming up. Chris Hine from the Star Tribune joins me in a little bit to talk Timberwolves. End of the season. The finish line is in sight. Just 9 games left in the season. Chris and I will talk about playoff push, talk about the 9 games left on the schedule, how they can get into that 6th spot, how they might not, what needs to happen, and a little bit of talk about Chris's book, too, his Ant book. Pre-order it. Should be out in a couple months, so can't wait to read that. I've read an excerpt. It's terrific, so Chris and I will talk about all of that here in just a minute. A little extra NBA stuff after that, and the Gophers hockey segment after that. Vikings here in a minute. First, though, what I miss. Happy opening day in MLB. Twins to those who celebrate. However, this should be a time to talk about everything happening on the field. Should be a time to talk about, hey, how do the Twins stack up this season? Sonny Gray versus Pablo Lopez today in the opener, 3 o'clock in St. Louis. We should only be focused on stuff on the field. Instead, we are still talking about how you are going to watch the game. That is because the Twins still have not announced, in partnership with Major League Baseball, and I do believe Major League Baseball is driving these negotiations, they have still not announced the channels that you can watch the game on today. Today's opening day. They have not told you exactly which carriers are carrying the games. They have said that the games will be on all of the channels, all of the carriers that they were on at the end of last season. Major League Baseball negotiating all these contracts, taking it right down to the wire. But they have said this is going to happen. It's not unprecedented that it would take this long. This is kind of how it went last year with the teams that were on MLB, that joined up with MLB for their production and their distribution. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Why do you bring this down to the last second? Why confuse people? Why are you making Twins fans either confused about how this process works or even unsure if they're going to be able to watch the opening game of the season today? Why haven't you told them exactly how they can do this? Now, a lot of these carriers are, the channels have already been assigned. If you poke around a little bit, you can find out what channel they're going to be on if you have certain carriers. Like, say, for instance, you have Comcast Xfinity. It looks like the Twins games will be assigned to channel 1261 on Comcast Xfinity, for example. All the other carriers that used to carry the Twins last season, looks like they all have channels assigned to DirecTV. All the other major cable carriers, Fubo's going to have them, stuff like that. So they're going to be there. They keep saying they're going to be there, but they haven't announced it officially yet. People are getting antsy. People are getting a little bit nervous about that. They want to make sure that this is taken care of before the season starts, and it just hasn't been taken care of. So I keep getting emails. What channel are they on? How can I watch? How can I be sure that I can watch? Things of that nature. I don't get it. I just don't get why a franchise, a sport that has burned so much goodwill with this TV stuff over the years is insisting on doing it again. Now, this will probably be a non-story in a week. I get it. This is not something that's probably going to linger. I get it. But they have not earned that trust where you just say automatically, oh yeah, I'm just going to sit tight. This is all going to work itself out. I think it probably will. I do think it probably will. That is the thing. I do think it probably will work itself out. However, there's been enough crap over the years with all of the Twins leaving different channels, not being able to watch it, not being on Xfinity for 3 months last season, that you just don't know how to trust all of this. Now, in all of this, I think still the good news in all of this is that you can sign up for a direct-to-consumer option. We've talked about this. Twins.tv, which runs through MLB.com and through the MLB app. You can sign up $20 a month or $100 a year if you are in the Twins market, which encompasses basically Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, and part of Wisconsin, the western part of Wisconsin. You can sign up $99 a year, $19.99 a month, and you can get the whole, all of the games that are available this season, except for the nationally broadcast games. Works out to about $150, I think, this season. You can get all those games for that price, and you can sign up for a 7-day free trial. If for some reason something goes haywire between now and 6 hours from now, opening day, opening pitch, you can sign up for that. But you shouldn't have to. If you have a cable carrier, if you have a satellite provider like DirecTV, you should be able to watch the game. So that's a fallback plan in case, break glass in case of emergency. More than that, it is the way that you can get the Twins this season if you don't have cable or satellite. So keep that in mind. You can get when you sign up for that, you can get a free trial. Otherwise, you pay for it. You can watch the game on your phone. You can watch the game on your tablet or computer, and you can get the app on your smart TV and watch the games on your TV. The MLB app. And then you go to the Twins game. I've just kind of prepared for this yesterday. You go to the Twins game, and about a little bit before the game starts, it'll pop on, and you can watch it. And that's an important thing to remember too. A lot of these dedicated channels on these other carriers, once they do go live, once these contracts are signed, once this is all announced, these channels will not be on 24/7. They'll be on basically just for the Twins. Some pregame with home games, a little bit after the game, and then the channels will go dark again. So keep that in mind. These, if you log on, or if you go to the channel at like noon, nothing's going to be happening on this channel. You might be confused. Nothing's going to be happening on those channels until the game is on. These are just dedicated channels just for Twins games. This is much different than when they were on FanDuel Sports, previously Bally Sports, previously Fox Sports, where it was a 24/7 channel with other programming. This is just going to be a dedicated channel for the Twins. If and when they get this all officially signed, which hopefully will be today, which might even be this morning, but it is frustrating that it has not happened yet. And of course, now we get the danger of recording in the midst of potential news. I stand by everything I just said, but in the midst of, after recording, but before finishing editing, the Twins did put out their official news release on channel lineups, everything like that. Yes, indeed, they are on all the channels you thought they would be on. DirecTV satellite, you can watch them on channel 668-3, streaming channel 668, Xfinity Comcast, like I said, channel 1261, Spectrum, channel 428 or 468, or channel 319 in Wisconsin, Midco, channel 638. Fubo's got them, and more. Full lineup available, channel finder at twins.com /watch. Beginning with opening day, Twins fans can finally watch our games where, when, and how they choose with Twins TV presented by Progressive, said Twins Executive Chair Joe Pohlad in a release. This is a day we have been eagerly anticipating. So there you have it. It is resolved. Release came out about 7 hours before first pitch. Everybody can watch the game today if you have those avenues, or like I said, if you have twins.tv through the MLB app, $19.99 a month, $100 for the season for in-market fans. Obviously, out-of-market fans also still have the option of buying the Twins package or the full MLB package as well. A little bit more expensive for that. I believe it's $129.99 if you live out of market. So different ways to watch the team. I still don't understand why this took so long. I don't think that's great for the fans, but at least we have resolution now before at least first pitch. Sounds like 2:45 for the pregame show today, special pregame show at 2:45. First pitch, 3:15 today. So wanted to get that addendum in there before. Thought it was only fair to add that in since I had time. I was just about to publish this thing, but we might as well get it as up to date as possible. On Wednesday, we got some clarity. Even if it's not all cleared up, we got some clarity on where things stand, where things have stood with the Vikings quarterback situation. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah addressing reporters, taking questions about free agency, about the upcoming draft next month. More or less descended into a whole bunch of questions about J.J. McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers at the outset. Basically, Kwesi's saying they want J.J. McCarthy to take the job and run with it, but they also are not ruling out Aaron Rodgers. They had that that opportunity and they didn't do it. I think there's some nuance there, but first let's roll a couple different parts of Kwesi's comments. The first part about JJ, the second part about Aaron Rodgers.
You guys all talk in terms of QB1 and all those conversations, different things like that. When we pull the resources we did to draft JJ, and you go through that long process and all those things, I can't stand up here and say that's the outcome we want, and that's the outcome we're headed towards. At every checkpoint, whether it been the draft process or practice until the injury, or really the offseason now, he's met the bar. I mean, he's exceeded our expectations at every point, and so I don't have the ability to tell you what the future is, but I can tell you what I expect to be the outcome this offseason from the competition. But it's also our job to set up a quarterback room that's going to have, be able to meet, have great ideas, and prepare whoever it is to play, but also provide, insurance in case somebody needs to come in for a couple of games. And that's our job as a personnel department to look at all the options out there and make sure we're setting ourselves up for the best case we can.
There's also been a lot of talk about Aaron Rodgers. Can you clarify what your level of interest, if any, there is in him?
Yeah, and I understand that. Aaron Rodgers, this organization and has known for a long time on the opposing sideline, talking about a great player, a Hall of Famer. So I understand that. I'll always say is it's our job as a personnel group to make sure we're aware of every potential option. Again, we're trying to make sure that we solve for scenarios that we don't know could possibly happen. We want to make sure that there's competition in the room to make sure that, if you remember last offseason when JJ and Sam were really competing, that brought the best out of both of them. And so you want an environment that's like that, a supportive environment to also just challenge each other but grow and learn and all those different things. And so we're trying to solve for a lot of different things at once. And, from all those conversations comes a list of names and maybe an order and an intentional plan on how to best solve for those things. So, a player like him, he's always going to be in those conversations. But, from our delineations at that time, we're happy with where we are going forward. But, obviously the caliber of player and just, all our situations, we had to make our considerations. Right now, given all our scenario planning, we're happy with our room. And, obviously we're going to talk a lot about J.J. McCarthy, but Brett Rippon, who's somebody we brought in last offseason, we thought, we made a lot of great decisions, quick decision-making, processing, better athlete than people give him credit for, accurate passer. So we're excited about him, and we're always going to keep looking to see if we can upgrade that position just like every other position.
So if you're a Vikings fan and you're kind of tired of this, I think you basically have at least a month, probably more like 2.5 months of relative calm. If they want J.J. McCarthy to take this job and run with it, nothing probably will change between now and the end of mini camp, which presumably will be in June. Okay, but there also is a key date, April 28th, that Ben Gessling wrote about today. April 28th, any free agent signed after 3 p.m. on April 28th does not count against your compensatory pick formula. And I think this matters to the Vikings. This matters with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, where you don't need to have him in the building right away if you're ever going to get him, because he can just walk in, he knows what to do, things like that. If they're going to get Aaron Rodgers, it almost certainly will not be until after April 28th. It would be hard to imagine that it would be right after that, because then you've got all the OTAs and stuff will usually start around sometime in May. Then you've got mini camp, stuff like that. They will want to assess where J.J. McCarthy is during that time. If anything's going to happen, it probably won't be until then. They have given every indication that this is J.J. McCarthy's opportunity to run with. But if he gets hurt again, if he doesn't look like he's ready, they have not ruled out Aaron Rodgers. That's where we are right now. They've not ruled out Aaron Rodgers, but I think you could just take a break for the next month at least, probably 2 months, and not have to worry about this right now. Let the process play out and see where J.J. McCarthy is by June and see where that goes from there.
Open a smart checking account at Royal Credit Union to get no monthly fees, no minimum balance, and a $250 bonus. See details at rcu.org/checking bonus. No minimum balance required to obtain bonus. Offer ends 5/31/25. Insured by NCUA.
Let's bring in Chris Hine to talk Timberwolves, but also maybe Chris. I didn't know this specifically, but I'm glad you pointed this out. Mariah Carey. Happy 56th birthday to Mariah.
We don't mention ages. She does not acknowledge time passing. She does not acknowledge time passing. It is also not her birthday. It is the anniversary of her 12th birthday. That's how she properly celebrates it, because she, in her mind, is eternally 12 years old. So every year we celebrate her anniversary of her 12th birthday. That is how we celebrated in the Mariah Carey fandom. Yes.
If she wants to live an illusion, that's fine with me, I guess. It's working out for her pretty well. I guess the mindset that she's in has led to fame, fortune, and success, many Billboard hits. So I'm sure you know the exact number of number one hits, but
19.
Okay, thank you. But yes, well, happy 44th anniversary to Mariah Carey then, if I'm doing the math correctly.
That's right.
The Timberwolves have 9 games left. Feels like this is maybe flying by a little bit. They played a whole bunch in there, and now it's just 9 left. It's a bit precarious, more precarious probably than the last time we talked. They were right in the middle of an 8-game winning streak last time we talked, Chris, and it was like, okay, everything's great, everybody's happy, depth is great, nothing to complain about. Now they've lost 3 out of 4. I'd say the last one was more forgivable, right? You lose at Indiana. That's a good team when it's at full strength, but it started with that loss to the Pacers here where, the Pacers were certainly nowhere near full strength. Obi Toppin hits a couple of really tough shots, but also is a game where the Wolves just kind of let Indiana into it, invited them to be in the game, and Indiana takes advantage of it. Then that loss to New Orleans, which is just like, wow, how does that happen? They blow out New Orleans, and then they lose again to Indiana. So here they are, the play-in, the 6th seed. Everything's in play right now, but a lot of it's just going to be determined by how they are able to, again, reset themselves after another lull here.
Yeah, this is the story of their season in a way. I wondered just how seriously they were going to be taking some of these opponents. And when I was with 20 games left, I was kind of charting the rest of the season and how feasible it would be to go 15-5 or something like that over that 20 game span. And they were off to a really good start, but I remember thinking to myself, man, this is a lot of games against teams that aren't very good. And this team just has that, I don't know if you want to call it a fatal flaw, but it kind of is if they end up in the play-in, of just not taking things seriously, especially at home. And they've dropped a number of these games this year. It starts against Indiana because I think, on paper that was going to be a tougher matchup, the Pacers coming into town. And then, they basically are missing their entire starting lineup that night. And the Wolves just gave into the human nature of letting their foot off the gas pedal. And it's just so hard to get a read on this team. They're such an enigma. But I think the one good thing they have on Friday night is there seems to be one or two teams I think that are always a cure for their ills. Whatever is ailing them at a given time in the season, if one of these two teams shows up, the Wolves play well no matter what, and that's Phoenix and Denver. The two teams they beat in the playoffs last year. For whatever reason, whether it's rivalry, familiarity, they seem to take these matchups against those two teams personally. I think in Phoenix's case, if you just look at Anthony Edwards, he's always wanted to battle Devin Booker for, being one of the best 2 guards in the league. And obviously, KD was his favorite player growing up. So he has no trouble getting motivated to ever play Phoenix. I think the rest of the team is the same way. And then Denver, I think the familiarity there over the last couple of years of playoff matchups breeds a little bit of contempt in some ways. And the Wolves have no motivational problems there. And those are 2 of the next 3 games, Phoenix and Denver. So if they're in a funk right now, they've actually, the 2 games against Phoenix in Phoenix recently were kind of like mini turning points for them, each of those games.
Yeah.
Chris Finch before each of those games had a meeting with the team before each of those games in Phoenix, and they came out of it playing better than they went into it, going into those 2 Phoenix matchups. So they're playing not great right now, but like I said, one of the 2 teams that helps cure their ills is coming into town on Friday night.
That gets me to a couple things. One, Finch, whenever they lose in that fashion, he gets asked about it. You ask him about it, somebody else asks him about it, and a lot of it comes down to shot selection, poise in games, and he doesn't always say who it is, but a lot of it is Ant still in these losses where he tends to play down to the competition. How do they get him out of that mode? Because it does all start with him, even if he's still one of the youngest guys on this team.
He's talked about that a little bit, where he needs to be more aggressive against some of these teams and come out really looking to score instead of deferring to his teammates in some ways, which may sound surface level kind of selfish, right? But if you're thinking about it in the context of trying to win and what's best for the team, a locked in and engaged Ant who's being aggressive is what's best for the team on these nights. Yeah. Not a more passive Ant. He did it. You know, that's what's puzzling is like, he did it when Utah was here. The win before this slide started, Ant came out and really took it to the Jazz that night, and basically, they ended that night very early. And then the next night they lost to the Pacers, but there was no issue that night against the Jazz for Ant to, I think he might have had even like 20 points by the end of the first quarter.
He did. Yeah, I remember that game.
And he was even talking about maybe going for 60 that night, right? So take that performance and use that going forward. You still have a number of games coming up on the schedule here that are very winnable, especially on this upcoming 5-game road trip. And, the last 2 games of the season are very winnable at home as well. So, the opportunity to still finish really strong, like, 7-2 or something like that, 6-3 at least, like, is on the table, and they pretty much have to. I'd probably go 7-2, I would think, to make their best pitch to be the 6th seed at this point.
I think that's true, and that's what I was going to get to with these 9 games. I think 6-3 is kind of the bare minimum to give themselves a shot, because you're fighting the Clippers and Golden State. The Lakers, whatever happens, but if LeBron is playing, if Luka's playing, you imagine they're going to win enough games in there because they've got a little bit of more of a cushion. But Golden State just got run the other night by the Heat. They didn't have Curry in that game. The Clippers are kind of volatile up and down, and I do believe the Clippers and the Warriors play
the last day of the regular
final
season.
Game of the regular season. I did some math. There's a 3-team tiebreaker would tend to favor the Wolves, Chris Hine, if all 3 of those teams finish tied. Because I do believe it would go. It would go the Wolves' way, because if the Clippers win that last game, Clippers will be 4-3 against the 3. Wolves will be 4-3. Warriors will be out of the mix, but then the Wolves would win that second tiebreaker because they're 3-0 over the Clippers. If the Warriors win, Warriors will be 4-4. Clippers 3-3. Wolves 4-3. So I do believe a 3-way tie gets them in. Obviously, they have the tiebreaker against the Clippers, so a little bit less dicey there, but they do not own the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Warriors. That was a 3-1 season series, so take that for whatever it's worth. It will mostly likely come down, though, to how they play. Rank these games in order of importance. We've got 5, all of them are important. We got 9 of them in terms of like, what are the biggest toss-ups? We got 2 here at home, Phoenix and Detroit. Detroit's a much better team this year than we thought they'd be. That's probably why the Wolves are going to get a draft pick next season instead of being shut out of the draft. Then a 5-game road trip at Denver, at Brooklyn, at Philly, at the Bucks, at the Grizzlies. Home, that's a back-to-back, but home against the Nets after the Grizzlies game, and then home against Utah to finish the season. The 4 home games seem winnable, but not slam dunks. I think the last 2 feel pretty winnable at the very least, and at least splitting these next 2 feels pretty good. 3-2 road trip, not out of the question given the competition. So what are the biggest toss-up games in this mix in your estimation, the ones that you could see going either way and that maybe have the most importance?
The biggest toss-ups, I think, is Sunday's game against Detroit. That feels like a true toss-up, like what Wolves team is going to show up that game. Detroit pretty much ran them off the floor the last time when they were in Detroit, and that actually prompted Chris Finch to make a change in the starting lineup. If you remember, that was the last game of the original starting lineup before Dante DiVincenzo replaced Mike Conley. Now they're back to the original starting lineup, but that game in Detroit, did force some changes earlier in the season. So I think that's a true toss-up. Again, at Denver, it just feels like, can you beat them for a fourth time this year? They have their number. But anytime I see Denver on the schedule, even with all the Wolves' success against them, you're just, it's Nikola Jokic and, Murray, just, as long as if they play well, the Nuggets probably win. But, the Wolves have shown an ability to really shut down Jamal Murray. Again, I think they take that matchup very personally, that the shutting down Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. Another toss-up, I'd throw the Milwaukee and Memphis games in there. Mm-hmm. Memphis has had their number this year. Two close wins for the Grizzlies. But, the Wolves' arch nemesis against the Grizzlies is out for the season, and that's Brandon Clark. Yep. For those that remember the playoff series 3 years ago. But Jaren Jackson always seems to play well against the Wolves. He has this year at least. And we'll just see kind of where the Grizzlies are at that moment in time, if they're healthy, if they're not healthy. Milwaukee, Damian Lillard's dealing with an injury right now. I'm not sure how long that's gonna take to resolve. And then the rest of the games, honestly, I'm throwing Phoenix in kind of the must win, just because they have their number and they have the formula to beat them. And, I think the rest of them are just must win. I really do. So, the two against Brooklyn, Philly, Utah, Phoenix,
those five
are must wins to me. I think you got to run the table with those five, and then, 2-2, and the other four, and you get to 7-2, and then you see what happens from here on out.
Which is harder, do you think, the 5-0 or the 2-2?
The 5-0. The 5-0.
Yeah, I think 100%.
So too. Yeah, they just for whatever reason cannot bring themselves mentally all the way there against these kind of teams. I think the fact that the schedule is broken up a little bit against those teams is maybe a good thing, where you do have, you have Phoenix on Friday, like I said, no motivational problems there. Detroit on Sunday, they're going to have to take Detroit seriously. And then you do have Denver. So the next three games, they can't afford to take their opponents lightly.
No.
And I don't think they will, because again, this is this team's characteristic. When an opponent is good, they tend to get up for them. And then you have the two against Brooklyn and Philly on the road trip. And then, another two tough games against Milwaukee and Memphis. And then so it's kind of broken up. It's like, you don't have just like this past stretch has been just a stretch of lesser opponents. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have 4 straight games against like lesser opponents the way that they kind of have had over this last homestand here. Like, it's 2 and 3 and 2 and so I think that benefits them. I think that benefits them.
I think it's kind of interesting they just don't really have, unless you count Memphis as catchable, and I don't really do that. They're 3.5 games behind Memphis. They're probably not catching them. But unless you consider them, there's nobody that they're going to play in these last 9 games that they're really like battling with for playoff position, right? Like it's, right. Memphis feels like Memphis and Denver are going to be 3 and 4 unless one of them gets caught by the Lakers, but none of them is going to slip past 5. It's really the Wolves, the Clippers, and the Warriors, and maybe you can consider the Lakers in that category just based on their health and what they've shown us lately as to what's going to happen. But the Lakers have a hard schedule coming up too, so you factor that in. But like they don't play anybody, they don't influence their own destiny in these games. It's more of can they beat good teams battling for playoff position? I don't think they have a great team left on the schedule, but certainly 4 good teams left on the schedule, and then 5 teams that they probably should beat based on where they are in the standings. Although if Phoenix is going to do anything, they got to go right now. If they want to be even in the play-in, they kind of got to do it right now. But this is kind of their last stand. But looking at it, it's unusual in that you got a whole bunch of games left, but nothing against the teams that you're directly battling against.
Yeah, that plays into the motivational factor. But I just think right now the Wolves are at a point in their season where, regardless of the play-in, regardless of whether they end up 6, 7, or 8, You just want to be playing good basketball. And if some of these good teams beat you because they played a little better on that given night, then so be it. But you just, even if you don't get the 6th seed, right now they're just not playing good basketball. But if you play good basketball the rest of the way and you end up the 7th seed, but you're playing well going into it, I think you'll feel confident. The fan base will feel confident, and you'll feel good going into that 7-8 game at that point in time. So I think even just regardless of the seeding, you just got to regain what you had over the last couple of weeks here. And, the emphasis today in practice was, toughness under the defensive end of the floor, more effort, shot contest, ball containment, all that kind of stuff. But a lot of that stuff is effort, and a lot of that stuff is will and desire. So they need to regain that on the defensive end of the floor. That was a lot of the emphasis today. They're letting the offense affect the defense a little too much. When the offense goes poorly, it's affecting their defensive performance as well. So last year's team was able to do that, kind of block that out a little better. This year's team has not. One thing feeds into the other, and right now they have to either get back on track offensively or just, try to have a short memory. And when you get back on defense, you got to let go what happened at the other end of the floor. Right now, they're not doing that. So they got to get back to these things, get back to more, team-oriented ball, I think, on the offensive end of the floor. And I think, it's not as if they're trying to discover what the formula is for this year's team. They have the blueprint. They just have to follow it now.
Given that, I'm having a hard time deciding if this is a team that is built well for the playoffs or not. Like their ability to beat anybody bodes well. Their ability to have these lapses doesn't. I don't know if the roster construction is quite what it should be, but they're deep, they're healthy, they've got good players. Like what do you think of their playoff prospects? Let's say they're the 6 or they are the 7, but win the first play and get to play someone other than Oklahoma City. Say they're playing like Houston or Denver or somebody like that in the first round.
Well, I think there's a couple fatal flaws that could pop up. I think number one is the clutch time offense. Huge problem this year and, in years past as well. Number two, they've shown a propensity to not rebound late in games, which has been a problem as well. And like I just said, letting the offense affect the defense. Last year, that was never a problem, especially in those Phoenix and Denver series. They never let their defense slack off in any of those 2 series, no matter what was happening on the offensive end of the floor. They seemed to really take the defense personally. And I think that might have been because of some of the matchups on the other side of the floor. But to me, those are kind of the flaws that I would look for in a playoff series. They have to figure out what they're doing in clutch time offense, and they just have to make sure they rebound the basketball. Because a lot of these issues and a lot of these games that they've lost this year have come down to those 2 things late in the games.
TJ Shannon has not gotten much run lately. Is that a function of everybody being healthy? Is it something he did on defense, offense? Because he was rolling there for a while. What do we make of his playing time?
I don't think it's anything he did. I think it's just a function of the rotation. And right now, Jalen Clark is kind of the preferred 9th man, and Chris Finch just doesn't go 10 deep. He just doesn't.
You said he would. He's not doing it.
Listen. He's not. He's just not.
No.
The fact that Jalen Clark is playing as many minutes as he is as the 9th man in the rotation is a minor development on the season.
Yeah, that's true.
So he just doesn't. And to your point about what their playoff ceiling might be, I think their depth is interesting to me because not a lot of teams will go 8 deep in a playoff series. It's usually 7, right? Maybe 7.5 guys. But because they have the personnel, when they say like they have 8 starters or whatever, right?
Right.
I do think within the context of a playoff series, it does give them the ability to shapeshift in a series in a way that other teams can't. So, the Wolves could, like, for instance, if they determine that Rudy isn't particularly a good matchup in a given series, they could pivot to a smaller, quicker, more offensive oriented lineup if they want. They could, there's just a number of ways that they could pivot with that top 8 and try to find the right combinations within the course of a series that I think, I talked about their fatal flaws a minute ago, but if I had one reason for optimism for the Wolves in the playoffs, it is that ability to just kind of fine tune what the right combination of guys is and ride those combinations within the context of a series.
Ant book coming out pretty soon. Pre-orders can't be too far away. Where are we at with that?
Pre-orders, available anywhere. Pretty much books are sold. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the outlets. Search for Ant. Chris Hine should pop up for you. Hopefully within the next few weeks here, we're hoping to get an excerpt running in the Star Tribune. And I'm very excited to have part of the story out there. June 3rd is the official release date, but we'd like to try to maybe capitalize on some of the playoff momentum coming up here and get your pre-orders in. And then over the summer, you'll have some nice reading. But right now, our plan is to hopefully run an excerpt in the next few weeks in the Star Tribune.
Playoff run would be good for the Wolves. It would be good for you too, I would think.
I would hope so. And then my publisher, HarperCollins, would certainly hope so as well. But it still doesn't feel real, to be honest with you. Like, I don't know how I wrote a book, if I'm being completely honest. Like, I look back and I say, I did that. It's like, how did I do that?
You blacked out. And next thing you know, there was a book.
Next thing you knew, 4 months later, there was a book. So it'll be very exciting once I have that in my hands, and hopefully for all of you out there, you go get it. I told people, you don't even have to read it; just buy it. Just put it on a shelf.
But you should read it.
You should read it. Don't get me wrong.
I read the excerpt the other day. It's great.
Put it with your other Wolves stuff. If you got a poster, if you've got put it on the shelf with all your Wolves stuff, collector's item.
Buy one to read and buy one to put on your shelf is what you're saying.
There you go. Exactly.
Buy two.
Just buy two. Buy 10. Exactly.
Buy 10 if you need to.
Buy 20. I'll sign them all.
Chris will sign them all. We'll have some official events. All right, Chris. Appreciate it. Awesome hard work on that. Great stuff this season. I'm sure we'll talk soon with the playoffs coming in a couple of weeks, or at least the play-in. Be well, and good luck.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Great stuff from Chris Hine, as usual. Thanks to him for being available again on this show. No thanks, the Wolves would say, to the Eastern Conference on Wednesday. It was 3 pretty good matchups between Eastern Conference and Western Conference teams. All of them in some way had a chance to do the Wolves a favor. Lakers at the Pacers, Clippers at the Knicks, and Bucks at Denver. All of them, all the Eastern Conference teams lost. Clippers going against the Knicks. They routed the Knicks. Knicks, no Jalen Brunson right now. Clippers win by 13. Knicks had a big lead after 1. Cameron Payne goes out. I think he was out for the second half of the game with the sprained ankle. Game turned really at that point. Clippers win. Lakers beat the Pacers on a LeBron tip-in at the buzzer, 120-119, and Denver beats Milwaukee 127-117. So all the teams that the Wolves could theoretically catch, that's mostly the Lakers, certainly the Clippers. All the teams the Wolves are competing for, playoff spots for, jockeying with in the Western Conference, all of them had chances to lose. All of them playing relatively good Eastern Conference teams, but that is all relative because the Eastern Conference teams are not good right now. Knicks had the home court. Pacers had the home court. They didn't win. They all lost. So there you go. No help for the Wolves in that matter. They have to do it all themselves. I think Chris is right. 7-2 over these last 9 would put them in a pretty good spot. 6-3 would give them a chance. We'll have to see how it all plays out by the finish, but no help from the East in the games on Wednesday night. Let's finish with the cooler. Gophers men's hockey begins play in the NCAA tournament. The regional Regional semifinals today in Fargo, North Dakota. Gophers versus UMass. If they win that one, they'll face the winner of Western Michigan and Mankato. Opportunity to get to the Frozen Four. It's in St. Louis this season. Gophers going to have to play better than they have been playing lately, but I still think they definitely have a good chance. I'm sure they'll travel well to Fargo. It's only a few hours, 3.5 hour drive from here, so opportunity for Gophers fans to get there. They should have some of their crowd there, certainly more than UMass, probably more than Western Michigan. All those teams have to go much further to get there. Mankato, not too bad, but the first round at least should be a pro Gophers crowd. So there you go. Will they get it done this season? Will they put in their first NCAA title in 22 years? Yes, the gap is almost as large as it was between 1979 and 2002, the 23-year gap between championships that they last endured. Then, of course, they went back-to-back, and now they are waiting again. That will do it for me today. Plenty coming up on tomorrow's show. Results of the Gophers NCAA tournament game. Results of Twins opener, TV resolution. Lavelle E. Neal III with our daily delivery debate. So much to get to on tomorrow's show. Until then, I'm Michael Rand. Have a great rest of your Thursday. Back at it again tomorrow.